I'm Baku and you are watching A News. Let's see the headlines. At least 18 people killed and dozens more injured after a massive Russian overnight missile and drone attack on Kyiv. 2 children dead and 17 others injured in Minneapolis school shooting. President Ilham Aliyev says Azerbaijan can increase the volume of gas export to Syria in an interview with Al Arabiya TV. At least 18 people were killed, including 4 children, as Russian forces launched a massive overnight attack on Kyiv. Explosions damaged homes, offices, schools and EU facilities, while rescue crews continue searching for victims.
Overnight, Russian forces carried out one of the largest aerial assaults on Kyiv in months. Russia launched nearly 600 drones and more than 30 missiles, including hypersonic and ballistic types. Ukraine's air defences intercepted most of them, but explosions shattered buildings across multiple districts. Damage was reported to homes, schools, offices, a shopping centre, the EU mission building and media offices. One 5-storey apartment building was completely destroyed. Among the victims, children lost their lives, including those aged 2, 14 and 17. Dozens more were injured and emergency crews are still working to recover victims from rubble, including those trapped under destroyed buildings.
The missile hit and people were simply thrown by the impact. They were lying there. There was a woman, a wife and their child. The woman was under a cement block, her head was cut, it was split open, it was cut. She was under this block, we were not able to lift it. It was only lifted when the emergency services came, they used a lift. But she was not saved. I saw a man, he was sitting on the ground. He was screaming for help. His leg was broken, and as far as I could see, it was cut. There was also a child crying for help. We first helped the child, it was under the rubble. We threw pieces of rubble aside, and we pulled the child out, we carried it away. The child was then taken away.
I keep thinking this is not the first time when Russia destroyed my home. First it was in Donetsk, then in Kharkiv, where I moved from Donetsk, and now here.
President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the attack, saying Russia had once again chosen missiles over diplomacy. European leaders also responded. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called it a deliberate attack on civilians and announced further sanctions along with the use of frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron described the bombardment as barbaric. Meanwhile, Moscow's defense ministry said its air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 102 Ukrainian drones overnight, which had targeted at least 7 regions.
Ukrainian representatives are due to meet U.S. officials in New York on Friday in pursuit of ending the war. U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff will attend and says Ukraine is considering Russia's peace proposal, while Moscow has expressed a desire to resolve the conflict. Witkoff said he is hopeful a peace deal can be reached by the end of the year, adding the final decisions will be made in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv, not in Washington. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius signaled his government is ready to back Ukraine with comprehensive security guarantees, but won't discuss specifics publicly until formal negotiations begin. Germany is also advancing concrete aid efforts from funding joint ventures for long-range weapon production to delivering air defense systems, signaling sustained and strategic backing for Kyiv. Meanwhile, Vice Chancellor Lars Klingbeil confirmed that Berlin will participate in Ukraine's security guarantees, consciously aligning support measures with Kyiv's needs and under its leadership in upcoming negotiations.
We consider every contribution we might be able and willing to deliver to provide for security guarantees for Ukraine, but we don't discuss that now publicly. And another point is, Obviously, Germany is the biggest supporter of Ukraine after the US, and our role will become even more important in the months and years to come. So there's nobody I know in the world who will ever doubt our commitment in supporting Ukraine.
And secondly, that the Americans said we want to be involved when it comes to security guarantees. These discussions are now ongoing, so we are only 9 days since last Monday. I know that hard work is being done by our senior military people, by foreign ministers, by national security advisors. So, I mean, this is detailed, difficult stuff. You have to hammer that all out. So the fact that 9 days later we have not agreed on everything is not a bad signal. It means that we are working hard, and I'm absolutely sure we will get there, deciding on the security guarantees, what it will look like with American involvement, US involvement, plus, hopefully, as soon as possible, that meeting between Zelensky and Putin.
Germany is expanding its military with a new 6-month voluntary service in a goal to double trained reservists. Young men will be asked to participate and women can join voluntarily. Here is more on that story.
Germany is moving to expand its military ranks amid growing security concerns over Russia. On Wednesday, the cabinet approved a draft law introducing a 6-month voluntary military service. The Defence Ministry hopes the scheme will double the number of trained reservists from the current 100,000, with some volunteers expected to continue into full-time service.
The Bundeswehr must grow. The international security situation, above all, Russia's aggressive posture, makes this necessary. We don't just need a well-equipped force, we are already well on the way there. We have been doing this for 2.5 years and will not stop. But we also need a Bundeswehr that is strong in terms of personnel.
Under the new model, starting in 2026, all young men will be required to fill out a Bundeswehr questionnaire on health, education and willingness to serve, with women invited to do so voluntarily. The programme is voluntary, but if too few sign up, Parliament could revive compulsory service.
But from today's perspective, I am confident that we will initially achieve the numbers we need. Everything else will then be to be assessed in light of developments. But I am truly grateful that we are taking this step today. This puts us back on the path towards a professional army.
Volunteers will receive incentives like drone training, language courses and driving subsidies, starting with basic duties before moving to specialised roles. The proposal now heads to Parliament, where debate is expected, with critics questioning whether voluntary service can deliver enough recruits to rebuild the Bundeswehr.
And turning to U.S. diplomacy, where President Donald Trump has held a White House meeting on the future of Gaza, joined by former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. The Oval Office talks centered on post-war plans, with officials stressing the challenge of ensuring Hamas doesn't regain power. Ubi Schwander reports from Washington, D.C.
President Trump held a policy meeting at the White House on Wednesday to discuss the future of the Gaza Strip and potential plans to rebuild the enclave once the ongoing war comes to an end. The policy meeting included former United Kingdom Prime Minister Tony Blair and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, who played a key advisory role focusing on the Middle East in the first Trump administration. The discussions in the Oval Office focused on how to increase aid into Gaza. Gaza could be facing a famine, according to some aid groups. Prime Minister Blair and Jared Kushner presented President Trump with ideas for a post-war plan on how Gaza could be governed and potentially rebuilt outside the control of the militant group Hamas. A day-after plan for Gaza would be a key component for any diplomatic initiative to end the ongoing conflict. But rebuilding Gaza, which is essentially destroyed, under new political and security management that would then be agreeable to both the Israelis and Palestinians, could prove a difficult task. A White House official told the press on Wednesday that President Trump wants the war to come to an end, and that he wants peace and prosperity to be available for everyone in the region. President Trump began his presidency with a ceasefire agreement that he helped broker between Israel and Hamas. That lasted 2 months until fighting resumed once again. The hope from the White House is that a deal that ends the fighting and returns all the remaining Israeli hostages can then lead to the rebuilding of Gaza and a better life for its inhabitants. The key question for officials here is how can this be done in a way that ensures that Hamas is not able to gain power and threaten Israel once again in order to prevent the repeat of the October 7th attacks that killed over 1,000 Israelis in 2023. I'm Ube Shabander, A News, Washington, D.C.
Minneapolis shaken after deadly school shooting at Annunciation Catholic School. Gunfire erupted during the annual start-of-year mass, leaving 2 children dead and 17 others injured. Families were left in shock and fear for their children. Authorities say the suspect, a 23-year-old former student, had a manifesto and weapons marked or intended for use on children long before, suggesting the attack was planned in advance. He later died by suicide. Officials are investigating the incident as a possible domestic terrorism and hate crime as the community and the nation grapple with the tragedy. France's Prime Minister François Bayrou likened the country to a sinking ship, its 113.9% debt and ballooning deficit pulling it under. He called a confidence vote for September the 8th, hoping to push through 44 billion euros in austerity cuts, eliminating public holidays, freezing spending. Polls now show most French want new elections, not budget austerity. France's public debt surged by approximately 40.5 billion euros in just 3 months, climbing to 3.3 trillion by the end of March.
Does France's situation threaten it with over-indebtedness? Does this situation warrant a response? Well, it's very simple. It's like a boat that has a leak, a hole in the hull, and the hull fills with water. So there are people who say, don't worry, the boat still floats. And from that point of view, we are irresponsible. And we are not irresponsible for ourselves, Mr. Boulot. Not even for you. Not for us. Not for our generation. We are irresponsible for the youngest French people. Do you realize? We have achieved something. I think it will go down in the history books. The country is crushed by debt. And you know very well that this is true. You have done 1,000 reports.
We will return after a short break, so please stay with us and don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back to A News. France's Prime Minister has drawn a striking comparison, likening the nation to a boat filling with water under the weight of its mounting debt. In a dramatic move, he has called a confidence vote in his government, a vote he is widely expected to lose. This comes as concerns over France's economic stability and political direction intensify both at home and across Europe. To help us understand the implications of this moment, both for France and for the wider European Union, we're joined by Klaus Jürgens, political analyst with Economist Limited in London. Klaus, thank you very much for being with us today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. Hello.
Klaus, let's start with the Prime Minister's metaphor, comparing France to a boat filling with water. What message he was trying to send, and how do you interpret it politically?
Well, in order to put this into perspective, we have to take a quick look at the way how France is actually governed. The president has huge influence. And we have to go back even before the time of the pandemic, the lockdowns, then the energy crisis, the Ukraine situation. And the president tried to justify spending, going into the red by saying this is necessary, this is required, hoping that actually the electorate would always stand by him. But you can't just run the country for years, definitely not decades, but not even years, on deficit spending. And we should not forget that the EU itself has very strict guidelines about inflation and the level of unemployment. And next door neighbors, Germany, always said if unemployment is higher than 2%, our market economy is no longer functioning. Now let's take a look at French figures for the last quarter of 2025. And we understand that it's a dire situation. The Prime Minister is right. It's like an emergency brake. The deficit is almost 44 billion. Now we could look not only to Germany, but if we look across the English Channel to Britain, there they say we do have over 40 billion pounds sterling deficit at the same time. Where has the money gone? How can we get it back? We have austerity plans in many parts of Europe, but of course, the electorate doesn't like it. So he is right. The boat is basically sinking, but not because he made the mistakes. The budget deficit spiraling out of control started long before he actually became Prime Minister.
Mr. Jürgens, why do you think he decided to call a confidence vote, knowing he is likely to lose it?
With my modest insight, family lived for many years in Paris. Now, the French have a certain way of going about politics. In the past, there were the socialists and then the conservatives, and a few in between, and the communists were there too. But there was certain stability. The president had a prime minister of the same party. The president had a prime minister from the opposition, but they made a kind of agreement and everyone was happy. Now, Bayrou has two options. He can wait until the autumn, and for sure in parliament, there will be a vote against him, a vote of no confidence, or he actually says, now I decide, I go ahead and ask a vote of confidence. And even if he knows he's going to lose, he would do it with a certain honor. And I think this is what prompted him to do it before the opposition comes back early in autumn and says, or late autumn, you have to go, and Parliament would definitely pass the motion of no confidence. He actually asks Parliament, and if then the result is no, there is no confidence, then there are three opportunities, three options. First of all, he loses. Yes, fair enough. Secondly, he loses, and President Macron says, okay, I appoint a new prime minister plus a few new ministers. But thirdly, if he loses, there might even be snap polls. And this is what, in particular, the far-right party and supporters of the Le Pen family actually are hoping for, that they would win big time at the ballot box, because then the electorate would say, enough is enough. Not only the deficit, but we want to have a new government. Three options, yes. But he had two. Wait until autumn, being kicked out, or risk it and being kicked out.
So how significant is France's current debt crisis in comparison to other EU economies?
It is absolutely significant. And for this time, please pardon me, we forget about Brexit now. Not looking east, but now looking a little bit northwest to the United Kingdom. Governments which increase their spending, basically out of control, in order to finance projects they could normally never finance, have two options: increase taxes or simply go bankrupt. And then one day the International Monetary Fund would come to your rescue or not. And then your government is gone anyhow. We saw it in Greece and in many other instances. It is very serious because if the government cannot stimulate the economy as much as it hopes for, because private investors simply shy away from investing into the French economy, then you have double trouble from the economic side. And unfortunately, as it seems, in the Élysée Palace, the economic wisdom, with all due modesty towards President Macron, somehow was lacking. Running a government by deficit sounds good, thinking the people are happy, but eventually you can't repay your debt anymore. Then you have to increase taxes, and private investors do not invest anymore. And then you have a serious economic crisis. France was once the second best economy of the Wirtschaftswunder economy after the Second World War, together with Germany. Now, Germany as well is going hugely into deficit, the biggest deficit ever after the Second World War, partly to finance defense, partly to finance some large-scale projects, again, because there is no money. How do they ever want to get it back? By reducing social benefits, by, for example, increasing taxes, increasing corporate taxes, increasing citizens' taxes. And how long can this go on? And it is a very, very dire situation indeed, yes. So we have United Kingdom, we have France, and we have even Germany, the former economic engine of Europe.
Mr. Jürgens, if the government loses the confidence vote, what are the possible next steps politically? Could this trigger early elections?
I think this comes down to the influence or the remaining influence of President Emmanuel Macron. If he thinks that a snap poll would this time lead to a stable government with his own political grouping gaining at the ballot box, I think he would prefer going to the ballot box one more time, yes. Even if only to have a stable government. Would you believe it? It is the 7th prime minister, if I'm not mistaken, under President Macron.
Yes.
And how many would he want to have? 8, 9, 10, 12? Impossible. If he would not go to snap polls, we would come already to number 8 or number 9. But Macron's rivals would only be too happy to see this caretaker government then crumble too. So I think early elections are on the cards, maybe not as early as some people would say, but definitely before the regular mandate.
But how might opposition parties in France use this moment to strengthen their political standing?
Oh, they already do. The number of potential candidates for the office of president is increasing as we speak. And only let us mention Monsieur Mélenchon, who is, of course, waiting in the wings and to finally get the say, perhaps as prime minister, perhaps even as the president. The opposition parties, this is, if I still have half a minute, coming back to my initial comment. In the past, we had a clear-cut division between the people's parties, although one of the people's parties was more conservative, one was more to the left, not necessarily comparable to CDU or SPD in Germany, but almost, and there was a certain stability. Now we have a total fragmented party political system. New parties sprang up. Old parties basically divided itself into each other, separating from each other. It is no longer possible to say we have either the left or the right. None of them is united at all. So the party political system is fragmented, and a stable government is very difficult to form. But perhaps the president would be well advised to give, should it be my second option, that there will be no early elections immediately, but another government, another prime minister, to risk it with someone else. And Monsieur Mélenchon is definitely waiting in the wings from the left.
So in your opinion, could France's debt situation spill over to affect the Eurozone more broadly?
Yes, if other governments don't listen, absolutely. As I said, we have the huge debt package in Germany, one of the neighbors. We have debt in the United Kingdom, although not part of the Eurozone. And other countries will realize very soon that if there is an economic crisis, before the government goes further into debt, you have to ideally restructure your economy. It is not only that the government is spending. Why are there economic problems in so many countries, including in France and in other Eurozone countries, Germany as well? Because they forgot to think about innovation, restructuring companies. Hardly any competition with the wider world, not even mentioning China. And if this is a positive outcome that the economy, sluggish or on the way to recession, actually realizes we have to create jobs, we have to manufacture at home, and then we have to export high quality goods. But for this, you need to have innovative high quality goods, because other countries make the same goods, but cheaper. But eventually we must say that cheap is not good. I don't say Make America Great Again is the solution formula for everything. Make Europe great again, make France great again. But French politicians have to realize that in order to stimulate the economy, you need A, a stable government, and B, you must reduce the deficit, and C, you must encourage innovation and creating jobs at home.
Mr. Jürgens, how do you see this crisis shaping France's influence in the EU in the coming month? Strong, weaker, or unchanged?
Well, crystal ball, thank you for this question. That is, of course, a tricky one. I would unfortunately say unchanged, because Europe is waiting what is happening in France, what is happening in Germany and other countries. I don't think that this will increase France's influence on the political parquet in Brussels, so to speak. Why do I say this? Because if a country is busy with domestic affairs, you seldom have the time to think about international relations unless you use international relations to divert from your own domestic crisis. But the electorate is not silly in no country. They will not buy into this. So yes, long story, short answer. I think unchanged. Nothing will change in the short term.
Okay. Political analyst Klaus Jürgens with Economy First Limited in London. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We truly appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
And after the break, we will look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Now we are going to take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev says Baku is helping Syria tackle electricity shortages by supplying natural gas. In an interview with Al Arabiya, he added that Azerbaijan is also entering the wider Middle East energy market.
Azerbaijan only want peace for Syria, for these people who suffered for so many years, and we want them to live in peace and see development there. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev said this on his interview to Al Arabiya TV channel. According to him, Azerbaijan wants to be helpful on the issue of shortage of electricity.
And we had a trilateral and even quadrilateral arrangement between Azerbaijan, Syria, Turkey, and Qatar in order to help Syria with natural gas to convert it into electricity. So the ceremony of the beginning of that process took place on the 2nd of August. Azerbaijani gas through Turkey is coming to Syria, and Qatar government was so generous to provide funds for that. So far, we agreed about 1.2 billion cubic meters of natural gas to Syria, but their demands are higher. So in the future, we can increase the volume of gas so that they have less shortages.
Ilham Aliyev also mentioned that in the future, Azerbaijani natural gas could be supplied to a broader range of Middle Eastern countries.
Of course, entering Middle East with our natural resources is a first experience for us. We think that, as I already said, we can increase the volume of gas to Syria, and also we can provide gas supplies to other countries through Arabian gas pipeline or through other means, through swaps. Also, we are trading energy resources. We are not only selling our own oil and gas, but we are working as an international trader. So our potential is bigger than one can imagine. So from this point of view, I think it's an important factor. With respect to relationship with countries of Middle East, primarily with members of Gulf cooperation countries, are very good, very friendly, and very result-oriented. We have a very strong partnership with these countries.
In an interview, Azerbaijani leader emphasized that Baku is deepening energy and investment ties with Gulf countries, with the UAE and Saudi Arabia leading renewable projects.
Connection lines, they cut the corridor.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is highlighting Turkey's push for homegrown air defense, and the country develops new systems and deepens defense ties internationally. Our correspondent Ali Aziz has more from Istanbul.
Turkey is taking major steps to strengthen its air defense and expand its role in global defense production. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan hailed the delivery of key components of the country's multi-layered steel dome system, calling it a turning point for national security. The system, designed to counter low, medium, and high-altitude threats, integrates land and sea-based platforms developed locally. Erdogan said 47 vehicles worth $460 million are now being delivered to the Turkish armed forces, alongside 3 Hisar medium-range systems. He stressed that no country can look to the future with confidence without its own air defense architecture. Turkish defense firm Aselsan is playing a central role developing artificial intelligence-based command and control software that allows hundreds of systems to operate as one. Officials say Turkey's defense industry localization rate has now reached 83%, with exports nearing $7.5 billion annually, and Ankara's defense push is reaching abroad. Turkish defense giant Havelsan signed a strategic deal with Egypt's Arab Organization for Industrialization to co-produce a new generation of unmanned aerial vehicles. The partnership covers the Baha, Bulut, and Bozbe UAVs, set to be produced for both Egypt and the wider African sector. Together, these moves highlight Turkey's strategy, securing its skies at home while building long-term industrial and defense partnerships globally. For A News, this is Aliyev Aziz, Istanbul, Turkey.
Moving to regional diplomacy, where King Abdullah II of Jordan has made a historic visit to Central Asia, marking a new chapter in Amman's ties with the region. Over the course of 2 days, the monarch traveled to Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, where more than 30 agreements were signed. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
King Abdullah II's visit to Uzbekistan was the first in the history of bilateral ties, giving particular weight to the talks in Samarkand. The two sides signed 15 agreements, including extradition, mutual protection of investments, the lifting of visa requirements, and cooperation in education, science, tourism, and agriculture. Uzbekistan and Jordan also agreed to significantly boost trade, launch joint industrial projects, and set up an intergovernmental commission. Regular flights between the capitals are also under discussion. From Uzbekistan, King Abdullah II traveled on to Kazakhstan. At the Akorda, he held talks with President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, and more than 15 agreements were signed. According to the Kazakh leader, relations between the two countries are now at their most productive stage in the past 30 years. A solid basis for this was laid during Tokayev's visit to Amman in February, when both sides agreed to expand economic cooperation, improve conditions for trade and investment, and launch a series of joint projects. Among the key agreements is a deal to create a joint venture between Kazatomprom and Jordan's national company Jumco to develop uranium deposits. Industrial and research work will continue until the end of 2026. If the results prove positive, the joint venture will be formally launched with 70% owned by Kazakhstan and 30% by Jordan. Kazakhstan is also exploring cooperation with Jordan in the field of drone technology. The Minister of Digital Development, Jaslan Madiyev, noted that although no agreement has yet been reached on joint production, Jordan's experience could serve as a foundation for building Kazakhstan's own drone industry. Currently, 59 companies with Jordanian capital are operating in Kazakhstan. In bilateral trade, turnover in 2024 reached $6.3 million. The visit will conclude with a major business forum in Astana, expected to bring together around 300 entrepreneurs and investors, with both heads of state due to attend. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
Azerbaijan's Karabakh Football Club has qualified for the main stage of the Champions League for a second time. The return match of the UEFA Champions League playoffs against Hungary's Ferencváros was held in Baku and ended with a 3-2 victory for the guests. However, Karabakh's first match win of 3-1 was enough to secure their qualification. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev congratulated the team in a post on social media, calling their success a new page in the country's football history. And finally, to a discovery in the region, archaeologists in Georgia have uncovered a human jawbone more than 1 million years old. The find at the Orozmani site south of Tbilisi offers new insight into how our earliest ancestors spread across the globe. Our correspondent has more.
The discovery belongs to Homo erectus, the first human species to leave Africa nearly 2 million years ago. Scientists say that jawbone is among the oldest human remains ever found outside Africa, confirming that this part of Georgia was a crucial waypoint in the early migration of humankind. The Orozmani site may be no bigger than 2 parking spaces, but is proving to be one of the richest. Alongside the jawbone, archaeologists have uncovered fossils of saber-toothed tigers, elephants, wolves, deer and giraffes, as well as caches of simple stone tools. These finds offer a rare glimpse into the environment where early humans lived, hunted and adapted.
So this is such a small site, yes, but it's so rich with bones. I mean, my second day I found a nice little ankle bone, nice little articulation of the astragalus, some foot bones as well. So you go down 5 centimeters every time you go. There's a good chance you're going to find something. And when we look between the two different lava flows, I mean, that anywhere we see that, this could be the same thing. So there's so much to be found.
By analyzing the remains, researchers hope to answer key questions about survival: what these first migrants ate, how they coped with new climates, and what conditions allowed them to thrive so far from Africa.
If you want to study like how adaptable these early humans were, in which kind of environments they were able to live, these are key locations, because these really, if you think about these early humans that were expanding out of Africa, they were evolved in African environments, and now they were dispersing out of Africa. And here we have this sort of very early hub of these early humans.
The discovery also adds to a pattern of finds in Georgia. At nearby Dmanisi, scientists have already uncovered 1.8 million-year-old human skulls, and in 2022, a tooth from the same period was unearthed close to Orozmani. Together, they confirmed the region as one of the world's most important windows into early human history. Archaeologists say that with every new season at Orozmani, more fragments of early life are revealed, and each one brings us closer to understanding the origins of humanity itself. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
After the break, we will discuss Azerbaijan's growing role in regional energy security, including its new natural gas exports to Syria via Turkey, and the broader geopolitical and economic implications of this move. Stay with us.
Welcome to Afghanistan in the summer of 2025.
It's been 4 years since the Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan.
The biggest achievement, obviously, is ending the occupation of Afghanistan. We will strive towards, after 50 years of conflict, to turn Afghanistan into a hub of cooperation amongst the many stakeholders.
When the previous Western-backed government collapsed, thousands in the country scrambled, fleeing in fear of persecution.
دولت فقط می تقاضا را داریم که کم کار زیاد کنه، جوانا در کار مشغول شوند دیگه شوند تا اصلا مجبور نشن برن به دیگه جای مسافرت کنن یا اوج سختی ها را طی کنن.
Mostly maybe the media's telling something about the Afghanistan, about the fight, but they shouldn't believe such a thing.
There are projects to kickstart the economy in the works. The Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Pakistan-India gas pipeline is one of them.
We're also working diligently with our counterparts within Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and Turkey to realize the Lapis Lazuli route.
We're here at the Port Torgundi in Afghanistan's western province of Herat. This is one of two starting points of the Lapis Lazuli corridor, the other one being in the north of the country.
بنابراین هر قدر ترانزیت یا مسیر راه‌های انتقالی بیشتر شه، این موثرتر برای اقتصاد کشور.
Welcome back to A News. Now we turn to a major development in regional energy cooperation. President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev said that Azerbaijan is exporting natural gas to Syria via Turkey with financial support from Qatar. So far, 1.2 billion cubic meters of natural gas has been agreed upon, though Syria's demand is much higher. Aliyev emphasized that Azerbaijan is ready to increase supplies in the future to help address Syria's shortages. To help us better understand the geopolitical, economic and strategic implications of this deal, we are joined by Osama Rizvi, energy and economic analyst from Lahore, Pakistan. Mr. Rizvi, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Mr. Rizvi, how significant is this gas supply agreement between Azerbaijan and Syria?
Well, this is significant and development not only for Syria, but also for Azerbaijan as well. It continues to play an important role in the region, and gradually, by every passing day and every passing month, it seems that Azerbaijan's role, the political economic role of the country, seems to be gaining prominence. So now the volumes are not that high, as you discussed in the introduction, but definitely Azerbaijan has the capacity to scale it up, and if it does, it can make it a very important regional player.
President Aliyev noted that Qatari funds supported this initiative. What role do you see Qatar playing in this energy corridor?
Qatar is like the financial enabler in this deal. So the Qatar Fund for Development is making sure that the capital flows reach where they're supposed to reach. But right now, Qatar, the importance of Qatar can also decrease, or it can be shared with other countries as well, as the needs of the gas and oil grows and the oil and gas infrastructure improves in Syria. But Qatar right now is essentially the financial enabler and playing a very important role. And of course, Qatar would also want to become an important player in the region. This is the bigger game of geopolitics. No one country can sort of dominate another country. Hence, there are multiple players involved in this reconstruction effort.
Mr. Rizvi, how does this deal align with Azerbaijan's broader energy export strategy?
Well, it feeds very nicely into what we can call a multi-vector energy and foreign policy of Azerbaijan. We should remember that Azerbaijan has already increased its exports to Europe from 10 BCM in 2021 to, and they now aim it to touch around 20 BCM in 2027 through the southern gas corridor. But providing gas to Syria hints or signifies to the world that Azerbaijan is not only the supplier to one country or one region, rather it has multiple nodes, and it also gives it also gives SOCAR and the country Azerbaijan itself a good commercial footprint in the region, which can only grow as things get better.
In your opinion, could this agreement strengthen Turkey's role as a transit hub for regional energy flows?
Definitely, the gas would literally pass through Turkey, and we have discussed this developments before. That Turkey, you saw Turkey going to Somalia to explore oil. Turkey is already, managing the TAP pipelines. It is already becoming, or to some extent, an energy hub or a transit hub. So, playing this role in Syria's reconstruction and acting as a transit country definitely further cements its footing in the region. Plus, it also gives it a geopolitical and diplomatic angle because Turkey would want a stable Syria as well. It's an important regional player, and yeah, I see a good, bright future for Turkey as an energy hub in the whole Mediterranean.
So what do you think, what impact might these gas deliveries have on Syria's struggling energy sector and domestic stability?
Well, for starters, the power blackouts and the unpredictability of energy flows can be resolved. It will help in creating some 600 to 700 megawatts of energy, but we need to remember that the country's demand for gas was around 6 to 7 BCM per year before the regime fell. So I believe that there needs to be a lot of reconstruction that should be done in order to so that the new Syrian government can actually, and the people can actually benefit from it. But for starters, it is good, but there still remains a lot of work to be done.
Mr. Rizvi, how do you expect regional powers, particularly Russia and Iran, to react to Azerbaijan becoming a gas supplier to Syria?
Well, let's see it on a timeline. So right now, the volumes are not that high. So there would be a sort of a guarded or a confined support to such a development. But if the volumes increase, then Iran provides around 3 to 5 million barrels of oil per month to Syria before this event, and that amounts to around 200 to 250 million dollars. Not that much, but still, if the gas volumes from Azerbaijan increases to a point that Iran starts to lose or Russia starts to lose significance, then it can cause a little bit of diplomatic tussle. But zooming out, bigger picture view, all of the countries might align at some point, because a stable Syria would give them a very stable and progressive corridor for further trade and regional integration. And the region needs integration. So overall, if we'll zoom out, it should be a win-win situation for all the countries involved.
So what do you think, could this initiative open the door for wider Azerbaijani involvement in Syria's reconstruction process?
Indeed, the reconstruction process would involve a lot of other variables: political, economic, diplomatic. If we even confine our analysis to the energy, it would involve repairing the feeders, the energy, the pipeline infrastructure, shrinking the gap between capacity and the demand, plus joint investments, and also increasing funding involving multilateral organizations. So this should be on the timeline down the road. But right now, we will have to wait and watch whether this develops into a wider reconstruction effort or not.
So what do you think, how might this development affect Azerbaijan's relations with Western partners who may have different views on Syria?
Well, we're living in a very interesting time, We have seen alliances shifting, ideologies going to the background, and sort of a selfish or a very realistic, realpolitik view of diplomacy establishing itself across the world. And this is we talk a lot about the changing world order. The most it manifests itself is in the energy order, the energy flows. So while some Western powers might look at it from a sort of a concerning point, I'd say that in Azerbaijan's involvement in various other matters, or for that matter, Turkey or other big players in the country, is only a natural, logical step, and it would not be wise, or it cannot be stopped. It can be sort of managed, but this is a natural progression towards another turn towards the Eurasian century, as many authors have called it.
Mr. Rizvi, can energy diplomacy like this contribute to easing tensions in the Middle East, or will it remain primarily an economic transaction?
Nothing that happens in the world is in a vacuum. No one's in zeros. So naturally, this energy cooperation will and should translate or spill over into other diplomatic and economic gain domains. But it's too early to say right now. As you said, the Middle Eastern or the regional stability, it would involve a lot of other matters. It will involve a lot of other players as well. So if everyone is on the page with that, which rarely happens, then we can, look forward for some positive development in terms of peace and stability. Otherwise, the least I can say is that it's still a positive step, and it may lead to something really positive and greater than what it looks right now.
Osama Rizvi, thank you very much for this discussion. We greatly appreciate your time and expertise on this important issue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned to A News for more.